And even for folks who are in the social work realm, and you think to yourself, like, what could I possibly do with this education, with this background that is not, slaving away for dollars, a couple dollars, and like having to get degrees that cost you six figures, and then it's just a cycle of struggle. And I've seen a lot of social workers honestly like leave the industry to go and start like coaching businesses, because a lot of the modalities that you guys use in order to, help people overcome challenges and like get to the places that they want to get to, a lot of this stuff is really transferable in the coaching industry. And so I like opening up people's minds to understand that your job title is not the only option that you have right now. You have to get really creative about how to spin your skills into different career opportunities that don't limit your income and your time.
Welcome to Season 11 of the Social Work Rants podcast, providing an inside look of the social work and mental health profession, continuing to discuss social work entrepreneurship, social work being political, and the day-to-day aspects of the social work profession. Hope you enjoy. What's up, y'all? Before we get started on this week's podcast episode, just wanted to invite you to join me on Saturday, October 4th in Long Island City, Queens for a live podcast episode from Bendicion, Chancleta, the Intersectionality of Mental Health and Finances in the Latino, Latinx, Latinx community from 1:30 to 4:30 Saturday afternoon. Come join me. There'll be food, DJ, raffles. I'm raffling off 2 autographed copies of Bernadette Joy's Crush Your Money Goals book. So, as she's been on the podcast before, so definitely tune in, come through. Hope to see you there, Long Island City, Queens. Queens, my second favorite borough. I'm coming. See you there. Hello, social workers, mental health professionals, and change agents. Welcome to another episode of the Social Work Rants podcast. I'm your host, Bass Moreno. Saludos a todos. Greetings, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, tapping in wherever you are watching or listening to the podcast. Happy Hispanic Hertiage Month, and in honor, or Latinx Heritage Month, because we got to keep it inclusive as social workers, and I don't want no beef. We got a very special guest. We're going to talk about all things money and ways to end 2025 on a high note and start 2026 in good standing with our money, and figure all things money situation, and don't matter what the Cheeto in chief is doing, we need to still get our money right, or the killer in chief, as I like to call him, what he's doing. So Jannese Torres from your Quiero, Dinero podcast, how you doing?
I'm doing so well. Thank you so much for the invitation.
No, thank you for the opportunity. We had a pleasure to finally connect in person through at FinCon in Portland. I had a pleasure meeting you. Your book is incredible. If you don't have a copy of the book, you're doing yourself a tremendous disservice.
Thank you so much. And it's available in Espanol too.
Yes, absolutely. So if you want to get your mind right, your money right, definitely go get the book. So for those who don't know who you are, who are living under a rock, let people know who you are.
Absolutely. So my name is Jannese Torres. I am the host of the award-winning podcast, Yo Quiero Dinero. I'm also an author, a speaker, an entrepreneurship coach, and my passion is just really disrupting the financial space and becoming like the community builder in the Latino community when it comes to creating a safe space where we can talk about money. I feel like for the longest time, the world of finance has been gatekept by certain people, and it's my duty, my responsibility to open up that floodgate and just really educate the masses so that people in our community can understand that all of the tools that exist to build wealth are also available to us. It's not as scary as you think. And if you didn't grow up learning about money, you can tune into the podcast and learn all the things that you wish you had learned about dinero.
Yeah, especially with the way systemic racism has been playing in our faces all this time. Like, I think ever since 2020, we really don't have any more excuses, because the information is there. Obviously, you have your book in English and in Spanish, and I've been talking about money the last year and a half, especially since I got my financial social work certification as well. So
Yeah.
it's out there for folks to, there's no more excuses.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, the internet is the great equalizer when it comes to accessing information. So if you feel like in the past you didn't have access to this information, it's because it was gate kept. So now with financial influencers, with podcasters like yourself, there are really a lot more spaces where we can get access to this info.
Before we continue, congrats on being one of the top money experts in Forbes and also is Bankrate.
Yes, GoBankingRates named me a top 100 financial expert, and I saw like there's people like Warren Buffett on the list. I'm like, oh shit, I'm in pretty serious company here. This is pretty cool.
That's no, congrats on that. That's huge, especially not only for yourself but for our community to see that's possible.
Thank you.
No, absolutely. So just give a little brief backstory. How did you get started? Like how to where you get started to where you're at currently?
Yeah, so I always like to tell people that this is an accidental career. I was not ever, setting out to be a financial expert, to write a book, to have a podcast. None of that stuff was on my radar up until I was about 30 years old. Before that, I was following the script, if you will, that many of us as first generation Latinos get. Go to school, get the degree, get the good job, plan to work until you're 65 plus. Hopefully, save some money for retirement and then like go off into the sunset. So that was my plan. Throughout my 20s, I worked in the pharmaceutical industry, in the medical device industry. I got a master's degree. So I was definitely like checking off all the boxes as far as like what you're supposed to do to be a responsible Latina daughter. But I found myself in a very common scenario where you're moving up the corporate ladder, you're making more money, but also still living paycheck to paycheck. And I figured out that something was wrong right around the age of 30 when I started making six figures and I was still in credit card debt. I was still unable to, save money. And I was just like, where is this going? Like, what is happening? At that point, I was also living in a very high cost of living area. I was living in New Jersey at the time. And so I just felt like I didn't have the full story around money. And then I started listening to personal finance podcasts around 2016, and I found a recurring theme where there's just not anybody from our community specifically that was talking about money at that time, right? The most, diverse podcasts were podcasts like So Money by Farnoosh Torabi. Farnoosh is Persian or Iranian background. And I started listening also to Journey to Launch by Jamil Souffrant. She is Jamaican American. And so I saw that there's still a void for Latinos specifically to have a community where we're also being spoken to. And I think what happened was my brain, which was trained up until that point as an engineer, because that's my career background, realized that I have found the problem, which is there's a gap in the market. So what am I going to do about it? And I had a crazy idea one day while I was listening to Cardi B and J-Lo's song Dinero, that was going to be the name of the podcast. So the chorus of the song goes, yo quiero dinero. I had this universe download epiphany moment. And I said, that's going to be the podcast. I did a Google search. It didn't exist. I snatched up the social media handles and started Googling, like, how do you start a podcast? Found some information, downloaded an app, started talking to my phone. And so this was April of 2019 that I launched the show. By January of 2021, it was blowing up to the point that I was having to take time off of work to do speaking engagements and do all these things, these opportunities that were coming up as a result of starting the show. And so in April of 2021, I handed in my resignation letter and I never looked back. And I've been doing this full time ever since then.
Amazing story. It's funny how you get inspiration from like songs or just anything. And then you get an idea pop in your head and boom,
it's true. I feel like music is a muse for me. Oftentimes, like I get the best ideas when I'm listening to music. And it's probably like a cultural thing because us Latinos, like we love to be dancing and partying and music is like therapeutic for us. So
no, absolutely. It's funny because that's because I know you do Zumba at a time, and I'm retired from Zumba. So Zumba, the company, do not stop sending me the emails. I promise I'm no longer dancing anymore. My left foot will not let me dance.
Oh, that's so
Do
funny.
routines. Leave me alone. But that's definitely music and dancing as a form of therapy is definitely
Oh yeah.
it's definitely a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even like my logo, part of it, even though I'm not a Boston Celtics fan, it is influenced by the old Boston Garden, the floor. So that's how I came up with the logo.
I love it.
um, and your recent moms, congrats on that.
Thank you.
For all the moms who listen, how you balance everything you're doing and being mom?
It's funny because I think for the longest time, and I talk about this in my book, I had this kind of dual mindset where if I was going to be successful, and I say successful in like quotes, I was either going to have to choose career or like motherhood, and I think one of the reasons why I had that perception is because I often saw different women in my life, including my mom, sacrifice their careers in order to be more present for their kids. So I had just this a recurring example of a lot of women who stepped back from financial security, who stepped back from career aspirations because motherhood just became like the default most important thing to pursue. And so for a long time, I really had, made up my mind that I didn't want to become a mom because of that. For me, it was very important to have financial independence ever since I was like super young. I can think back to, when I was 11 years old and seeing how different my mom and dad's career paths went and how much she was dependent on him financially. And I don't know, I just had this like internal, I don't ever want to have that dynamic in my own life. And so I was always very like fiercely independent. Always felt like I needed to make my own money, needed to have my own financial protection. And it really wasn't until I started pursuing entrepreneurship and really learned about like the concepts of financial independence and early retirement that the idea of motherhood even became viable. Because in my previous career as an engineer in a very like male driven environment, I was usually the only woman in the department. It was very much an environment that was kind of like, we are not structured to support parenthood. And especially when you saw just the disparities between parental and maternal leave, the guys would get like 2 weeks off. The women would get maybe 6 to 8 weeks, but there was always this perception too that like they preferred women who didn't have kids. I generally worked in environments where people were either childless or they were male, and then the woman, quote unquote, is at home taking care of the kids. So I always felt like there was this unspoken expectation, like you better be able to like meet up or match up with the boys, and kids and family is never going to be the excuse, right? Or we're never going to accommodate you. And so it really wasn't until I realized that my corporate career was not compatible with parenthood and started really like doubling down on entrepreneurship and understanding the freedom that comes from like being your own boss and not having to report to anybody and being able to control your income, that the idea really opened up for me. And I tell women all the time, like, unfortunately, we live in a country that is very pro-birth, but not pro-parenthood. And so the only way that I have found to achieve, and I say this in air quotes, balance, is to have more autonomy over your time, is to work for yourself, is to be able to control your income so that you are not at the mercy of a system that frankly is not built to support us. And, it frustrates me because I speak to people from other countries and I see how different things can be, with things like universal health care and like paid family leave and, just like government policies that support parenthood. And we really like to talk a lot of crap here in this country that like, the birth rate is declining and people don't want to have kids. And it's like, well, duh. I mean, like, what are we doing to actually make that viable for people? What are we doing to encourage people to grow our society and like have the next generation? We don't do a damn thing about it. So I'm not surprised that that's the direction that we're going in. And I really do feel like until something systemically changes, the only thing that you can do is really like, use your financial power to give yourself more options. And that's the only way I've been able to achieve that balance.
Gotcha. No, definitely. And it just everything's like you said, the whole corporate structure in America, period, doesn't matter what line of work you in, is just not suitable for having parents. And
No.
it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, there's people now that are paying more in childcare than they are for their mortgage. And then, there's more and more women, especially post COVID, that have left the workforce because the return to office policies have changed, because there is more of expectation for you to be sitting in the office again, where it's just like, we know that that's not a requirement to do most jobs at this point, especially if you're staring at a freaking computer all day. You can do that shit in your house. Exactly. But there's like this need to micromanage people. And I like to say, a lot of corporate America is structured like adult daycare. They really just want to have eyeballs on you. They want to just be like babysitting you so that they can say, like, we know what they're doing. And I think back to my own corporate career, like I was hella unproductive in the office. I was a salaried worker. So I would go and take 2-hour lunches, maybe work like 2 out of those 8 hours of the day. How much time do you waste on commuting? I was way more productive during COVID when I was at home and like not having all the distractions of people coming up to your desk and just nonsense. So it is not that they want us back in the office because we're more productive. It's that they want us back in the office because they want to control. They want to control people. That's it.
No, I totally agree with that. That and we're tired of paying rent and nobody's in the office.
Right. I mean, y'all bought these $10 million buildings that are empty. It's like, who told you to do that? I mean, wasn't the whole point of the internet to give people like flexibility and all that? So, there's a lot of things at play that just make the whole system very frustrating. And I'm really a big advocate of just like, the 9 to 5 is not the only way. And even for folks who are in the social work realm, and you think to yourself, like, what could I possibly do with this education, with this background that is not, slaving away for dollars, a couple dollars, and like having to get degrees that cost you 6 figures. And then it's just a cycle of struggle. And I've seen a lot of social workers, honestly, like leave the industry to go and start like coaching businesses, because a lot of the modalities that you guys use in order to, help people overcome challenges and like get to the places that they want to get to, a lot of the stuff is really transferable in the coaching industry. And so I like opening up people's minds to understand that your job title is not the only option that you have right now. You have to get really creative about how to spin your skills into different career opportunities that don't limit your income and your time.
Yeah, that I like that man. That's so true and honest and real. That we have these transferable skills and could do pretty much anything. Hey, we don't need to pay for the racist ass license exam or continue gets paying for CEUs and all this stuff that we continue to pay nonstop and able to do other things. What was the process like writing your book?
Oh man. I like to, now that I am a mom, it's very similar. Okay. It is very similar to birth a book, the same way that it is to birth a human. It just feels like an impossible task. Like, how am I ever going to do this? There is something very humbling about thinking, about how you're just going to put words on paper that are going to live past your existence. There's a lot of pressure that comes from that, of just making sure like I am saying something that is going to stand the test of time, that I'm going to still believe, right? And advocate for long after I'm gone. So a lot of imposter syndrome came up, a lot of like, who the hell am I to be writing a book? And I had to just ground myself in the idea that, again, this book is something that did not exist. When I was doing the market research for my proposal, I was told by my agent to basically do a market analysis of like what is existing content out there as far as books that are written specifically for the Latino community. And I couldn't find any. There was not a single mainstream traditionally published book that was specifically marketed towards Latinas. And so when I saw that, it was very much the same like aha moment that I had with the podcast, in that if I don't do this, then there's just going to continue to be this vacuum of information that is not available in a way that is like culturally competent and relevant to our community. And so that was the main driver for me to like get out of my head and not make it so much about me and like my ego and like, oh my God, who am I to do this? The question really became like, what if I don't do this? And then there continues to be this void. And so it was almost a 3-year process from initial idea to the book being on the shelf. And it's one of the most rewarding things that I've done. You know, every time I get a message from somebody or I meet somebody in person, that's like, your book changed my life. Your book verbalized things that I thought I was the only one that had gone through, you know, this money trauma that you spoke about. It's like, oh shit, I felt that way too. I feel that way too. It's been such a rewarding process, and I'm so glad that, you know, I stuck with it.
No, that's great, and again, the book is incredible. And sure, on the way back from Puerto Rico, the book is in the airport. I was like,
I know it is something else to see your face on a book in the place that your family comes from. I mean, talk about a full circle moment. You know, I never in a million years would I have thought that like little old me would be in the San Juan International Airport, and it's like, oh shit, we made it.
Yeah, I was like, oh shit, I see the book. Take a picture.
I know her.
Oh man, no. Is there another book on the horizon?
You know, I will never say never. I think that my journey as a serial entrepreneur could definitely be like a completely different book. It's funny too, because I've had this idea for a while too. I am, besides like a personal finance educator, you mentioned Zumba, I'm a music fanatic, and especially like música urbana, like música latina. I'm a big like reggaeton artist fan. Like I go to all the concerts. I follow all the podcasts. Like I love the come up stories that come out of that genre, especially because, you know, so many of the artists have like these very relatable, you know, come from the struggle, make it past a bunch of barriers and like find success, you know. And some great examples of that are like, you know, Daddy Yankee, for example. Daddy Yankee grew up in the hood in Puerto Rico and, you know, became the biggest freaking star in reggaeton and opened up all these pathways to new artists like Bad Bunny, etc. And so I have this idea too, to eventually write a book that ties in that, like those artists, to contemporary like entrepreneurship themes about just, you know, like taking the journey that or doing taking the path less followed and like all of the lessons that we can learn in those come up stories. I actually did a pilot episode. I did a pilot like version of this on YouTube where I dissected and analyzed like interviews from Raul Alejandro and his story and how they can relate to different themes in entrepreneurship. And it was so much fun that I'm like, I feel like this is going to be a book one day. So I'm putting that out there as well.
No, I like that. Did you get a chance to see the reggaeton documentary on Peacock?
Did I? Was it featuring like a bunch of different artists like Karol G and Bad Money and them? Because I saw something on Amazon Prime, but I'm not sure if it was the same documentary.
I don't know if it's the same one, but Peacock had one that's like literally like the origins of reggaeton, and it had.
Oh, I love that. I'm gonna have to check it out.
And it had Daddy Yankee, where he grew up, and like all the stories from like the very beginning, and Vico C was in it. And
oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I definitely have to check that out. I also saw a podcast episode recently on the podcast Latino USA where they interviewed Evie Queen, and she talked about her whole come up story. And I mean, she's such a badass, legendary mujer in the reggaeton industry who paved the path for so many people. And she is a change maker all in her own. So I love the very similar, you know, come from nothing, come up stories that come out of that genre. And I think a lot of them are applicable to the world of finance and entrepreneurship and just like success in general.
No, absolutely. To see where they grew up to where they are now and being mega stars all over the world and
exactly
being business owners, and it's very inspiring.
Yeah, for sure.
What's next for you? What's the rest of 2025 going into 2026 looking for you?
2025 was my first year as a mom. So a lot of the beginning of the year was kind of finding a new normal and like how to, fit all of these different roles into some sort of structure that allows me to continue to do what I love. I feel like I'm finally coming up for air about 9 months into the journey. And so I'm really looking to close out 2025, just like reflecting on all the things that worked. And 2026 for me is going to be much more in-person stuff. So I'm really inspired after like 2024 being my cocoon year where I launched the book and then I went into, self-preservation mode because I was pregnant and I'm like, I can't be out here in these streets like this. So I'm looking forward to 2026 being the year that I bring back maybe some live events, have more opportunities to meet folks out in the wild and just continue to spread the message and continue to grow the platform and grow the impact because I think even though I'm going to be now in year 5 doing that full time and year 7 just in general, I feel like I'm still just scratching the surface of what is possible. So really excited to see kind of what comes of the following year.
Awesome. For like an entrepreneur who's like still beginning within like the first couple years and like how do you sustain like just being positive, like something's definitely going to come and just kind of like being patient, like how do you like deal with that?
I think one of the
I want
things
the money now.
I like to remind people that every overnight success story is usually like 10 years in the making. And I actually posted a Instagram reel yesterday where it was a little snippet of a 2016 concert that Bad Bunny was doing. And it's like in a little nightclub. There's maybe like 20 people in there, right? It just looked, nobody's paying attention to him. And you just look at that versus like what he's done and like the way that he's blown up. And it's such an important reminder that like, again, the overnight success is usually a decade into the making. So I think it's important to kind of put your blinders on and not have this comparison trap, situation where you're like looking at what other people have accomplished, but you have no context around like, how much time have they put in? How many resources have they had access to? What has been the privileges that they have? There's so much behind what we see other people accomplish that I think without that context, it can just make you feel like you're not moving fast enough or you're not doing enough. So I think it's important to just remember your why. Like, why did you start doing this? What is the purpose? It has to be beyond money because you're not going to see the money in the beginning, right? For a long time, you won't be out here struggling, trying to figure shit out. But what has always kept me going is the greater why. I never started business with the main goal of I need to make money doing this. I always started from a place of like pure curiosity and knowing that it's going to take time to figure out what that lane is going to be and being open to learning, to being curious, to always improving, always looking back and seeing like what worked, what didn't, what did I enjoy, what did I not, because entrepreneurship is really just a big game of throw a bunch of shit at the wall and like see what sticks. And I think honestly, when you go into it with that mindset, you come from a like much healthier place than, oh, this isn't happening fast enough or, oh, blah, blah, blah. All that is going to do is just kind of suck the energy out of the room and make it not a pleasant process. And for me, I'm like, if you're going to start your own business, like you should definitely enjoy that shit. Otherwise, go and get a job and work for somebody else and go be miserable without you having to like do it yourself. You don't need to do that to yourself.
I like that. And we gonna end it right there. That's just funny. On that note, thank you for your time. Keep up the great work and talk soon.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.